Good morning. I'd like to call this public hearing of the House Finance Committee to order. We will start. Some of our members are online, some of our members are here. We will start by having the roll call taken by Dalton Dombrowski.
Chairman Samuelson,
Here.
Representative Cepeda Freites,
Here.
Representative Deloso,
Okay.
Representative Fielder,
Okay.
Representative Friel,
Here.
Representative Gallagher, Representative Kenyatta, Representative McNeil,
Here.
Representative Mirsky, Representative Rabb, Representative Scott,
Present.
Representative Smith Waddell, Representative Waxman,
Here.
Representative Webster,
Here online.
Chairman Griner,
Here online.
Representative Bernstein,
On leave.
Representative Brown, Representative Fritz, Representative Jones,
On leave.
Representative Kephart, Representative Mako,
On leave.
Here.
Oh, here.
Oh.
Sorry. You were on my list.
Representative McCurry,
On leave.
Representative Rader,
On leave.
Representative Rossi,
Here online.
and Representative Kutz.
Thank you. Some of the other members are on leave today, and some will be joining us during the hearing online. So thank you. We'd like to start we have two bills to discuss at this public hearing. We have House Bill 2536, sponsored by Representative Chris Sappy of Chester County, and we have House Bill 2565, sponsored by me of Northampton County. But we're going to start with House Bill 2536, and it's a constitutional amendment. The legislation is in our packets. It was introduced in August, and I am going to call on the three of the four prime sponsors to testify, and we will start with Representative Sappy.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this important legislation. I'd also like to thank the co-prime sponsors of 2536, Representative Amara, Representative Cerisi, and Representative Prokopiak. The issue of property tax relief has taken a back seat in the Capitol in recent years, and it is my hope that this legislation sparks renewed discussion and offers options to counties in our Commonwealth. House Bill 2536 amends the state constitution by removing the limitation permitting long-time owner occupants programs, or loops, only in Allegheny and Philadelphia counties. This removal would then make future legislation permitting all taxing authorities to adopt such a program to provide greater tax relief to seniors possible. Currently, counties of the first and second class are permitted to adopt uniform property tax provisions applicable to long-term homeowners. Philadelphia, the only first-class county, has adopted this measure, and it's run by the city's Department of Revenue. The LOOP program helps taxpayers who have, as stated, lived in their homes for a long time, experienced a property assessment increase over 50% over the previous year, or more than 75% over the previous 5 years. In order to qualify, these homeowners must have lived in the home for more than 10 years, have current property taxes or be in a payment agreement, meet income requirements which differ depending on the size of the family in the home. Importantly, if demand for the program exceeds the annual budgeted amount, individual discounts could be reduced to meet the program demand. Loops would help longtime residents stay in their homes as property taxes increase due to rising property values of growing neighborhoods. Loops would be particularly helpful to seniors living on fixed incomes. So to clarify, House Bill 2536 is a constitutional amendment. If passed in 2 consecutive legislative terms, it would simply provide the option for the General Assembly to consider removing limitations on other counties in our Commonwealth to create loops or long-time owner-occupant programs. I believe creating options to address property tax burden on an ever-aging state is a worthwhile endeavor. If enacted, the decision to create a loop, or if it's even feasible, would be left to the county to determine based on their individual circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Sappi, and we'll leave it open for questions, but let me also hear from the other. I understand Representative Amara cannot be with us today, but we do have Representative Jim Prokopiak from Bucks County. And I think Representative Prokopiak's online right now. The floor is yours.
Thanks, the chair. And thank you to the members of the Finance Committee for taking the time to talk about this important issue. And thank you to Representative Sappi and Representative Cerisi and O'Mara for also co-sponsoring this. Quite simply, property taxes, especially for those on a fixed income and long-term residents, are a significant issue in my district and all throughout the Commonwealth. I live in Levittown, which was the sort of the first suburb, a place where middle-class people of modest means could go and buy a house and raise their families. Many of those people are now being taxed out of those houses, both because of the significant rise in property tax values, as well as property taxes ever increasing. This constitutional amendment would simply allow all taxing authorities to have the same ability to help those people as they do in Philadelphia and Allegheny counties. I think it's a worthwhile endeavor to do so. Just for in terms of my area, I looked at, according to Zillow, in the last 8 years, property values in Levittown have increased nearly 80%. That places a burden on those who are trying to keep their houses, especially on a fixed income. I think we need to do more and have a discussion about how we can help those people better weather these changing financial times and allow them to stay in their homes longer. Housing affordability is a big is obviously a big issue. And for those people who live on fixed incomes, they may not have any place to go. I think it's something that we should consider moving forward with. It's something that will help many of our constituents, especially those who have done so much to build our communities, and I thank you.
Thank you, Representative Prokopiak. And we now have another testifier, another prime sponsor, Representative Joe Cerisi of Montgomery County. Representative Cerisi, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you taking the time to have this bill heard today. And I want to thank my colleagues who are also the co-primes on this bill. And I think the significance that you see is each one of us represent one of the Collier counties. I represent the largest Collier county. Obviously, Montgomery County has, outside of the 2 cities, the largest population in the Commonwealth. But we are all representing the Southeast as we look at this and the importance of this bill to our residents. Look, it's wonderful that Philadelphia and Allegheny County have an option to do this, but why is it only to those 2 areas? The significance of growth that we've seen in our communities and the tax increases have been significant over the years, and our seniors need a break and our residents need a break. This bill gives us an opportunity as a legislative body to finally say that we are for this type of opportunity to freeze our taxes, to give breaks to the seniors that we've heard for the 6 years that I've served in the State House, that we're always looking for these options. And together we can vote to say we want this constitutional amendment to be able to put out there to let the people of Pennsylvania say whether they want this or not. And then to let our counties decide it from there. But we've given them that option. We've given people an option to say that we are willing to see your property taxes frozen and with the longer times that you can stay in your homes. So I think that Representative Sappi put it right with everything she said, describing the way the bill would work. I would ask that this committee gets this bill to the floor, and as a body, legislative body, we're able to vote this through for the people of Pennsylvania and let them decide whether they want to see their property taxes frozen or not. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and your hair looks great.
Thank you, Representative Cerisi. I just wanted to open the opportunity for members to have questions. I do want to point out for the record, we did talk about this issue related to the city of Pittsburgh. Back in the summertime, we had the Constitution and state law does allow Philadelphia County and Allegheny County to adopt long-term owner-occupied relief programs. The bill that was before us earlier this year said that the city of Pittsburgh could enact such a program, a loop program, even if all of Allegheny County chose not to. That bill did pass the state Senate, it passed the state House, and it was signed by Governor Shapiro. So that is now Act 53 of 2024, giving city of Pittsburgh the option. Pittsburgh has not yet taken action on that, but as of this summer, they do have the option, even if Allegheny County does not. My question, I guess, would be for Representative Sappi, just to reinforce, if this constitutional amendment would pass in 2 consecutive legislative sessions, after that, there would be a 2-step process. The legislature would have the ability to extend this option to all other counties besides Philadelphia and Allegheny. And then each local community would make the decision of whether or not they wanted to enact such a program. I want to give Representative Sappi the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Thank you again, Chairman. So if this constitutional amendment passes the General Assembly, which is the House and the Senate, in 2 consecutive sessions, it then would go to the public on referendum to vote on. And then that gives us, as the General Assembly, the opportunity to introduce legislation that would allow our counties to do that. So there's a few steps here. And obviously, this is going to require some patience and some determination on our part to get through this in the next couple of years. But I believe it's in the best interest of, our taxpayers, our seniors, and our counties. To give everybody, an option like this, I think, is the best way forward for property tax relief. Who knows better than our local governments whether they can or cannot afford to do this? I mean, it's based on how many seniors are in a particular neighborhood, how many people meet the qualifications of this program. So again, we would pass it and it would go to the public for referendum, and then the General Assembly would need to pass legislation, like regular legislation, that enables our counties to do this. I hope that is helpful.
Thank you, Representative Sappi. I do have a question from Representative Paul Friel of Chester County.
Thank you, Chairman. And I really appreciate this bill, and I thought as we voted on the one for Allegheny County that we should do property tax relief for the entire state. My question, though, and comments around the approach with long-term owner occupying, I'm worried if it's too narrow here for and do we have unintended consequences? And I'll paint a scenario. We have older folks who are aging in, let's say, large homes, had large families, and as we want to downsize, and we're faced with this now as we sell a home and let's say we want to stay in the same neighborhood but maybe downsize, you get an increase in property tax because it's on the new market rate on the home you purchase. And in that scenario, we have the property taxes following the relief here would have to stay with a property and it wouldn't move with the older or the folks who are meeting these hurdles if they in fact wanted to downsize or move. And I'm wondering if we could make this broader, because the unintended consequences is on housing inventory. People are going to be then locked into lower taxes in a particular neighborhood, particular house, and they won't be able to move, because if they move, their taxes will go, even if they can trade the market value of the house for a lesser market value, their taxes might go up significantly because they would no longer qualify for this if we don't allow it to follow the people who need it versus stay with the home where they are. And I'm wondering if people move within a community, if we couldn't allow them to keep their tax eligibility to keep it at the historical rates, versus making it tied to a particular property. So I just want to hear some comments on that, if we're concerned about that at all.
Thank you. I'll give Representative Sappi the opportunity, or Representative Prokopiak or Cerisi. I do just want to jump in first and say that if this constitutional amendment would pass, an important step after that would be enabling legislation by the legislature, and the legislature could set parameters in that enabling legislation for who's eligible and what guidelines a municipality would have to use. Now, obviously, the choice of whether to do it or not is the municipality, but the enabling legislation could address several of those issues that Representative Friel just brought up. I do want to give Representative Sappi a chance if you would like to add something.
Sure, and thank you, Chairman. You kind of hit the nail on the head there. This is just the constitutional amendment to enable us to move further. So if we wanted to parse this a little bit in terms of how we provide it, or if we make it mobile, in other words, for people to take it with them if they do want to downsize, that's something we could discuss in legislation that would come after the constitutional amendment.
Great.
And Representative Prokopiak?
Yeah, I would thank Representative Friel for his thoughtful question. I think one of the reasons that we chose this format was because we've already done it twice in this state, in Allegheny and Philadelphia County. So it's something that is it's not a giant leap. We're not changing fundamentally how we're taxing. We're providing the same tax relief that we're already giving the ability to in Philadelphia and Allegheny to other parts of the state. And I think that's why we chose this. I'm certainly up to discussing a change, but I think we did this because it's a tried and true method that's already in use in this state.
We also have a comment from Representative Cerisi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think that, Paul, the comment you made is 100% right. This bill should stay clean because we've done it twice. Why are we giving it to Philadelphia and Allegheny County? What about the rest of the Commonwealth? Why shouldn't they have the opportunity? But again, and I'm going to put this to you, Paul, in the way that you understand it too, as school board members, we know what the burden is on our taxpayers, and we've seen it, and we've looked for ways to curb. Jim too, I forgot, I apologize. Curb the taxes, and I think that we need a separate bill that talks about the way that we give the opportunity to freeze taxes, because this is for you to stay in that property more so than for you to move. A lot of our people will move and make a nice profit on where they move from, and sometimes even downsize and go somewhere else. So the other bill should handle the whole idea of, okay, at this income, at this property level, now the school district has an opportunity to freeze your taxes, and we're going to help subsidize it. But I think we keep this clean to say that we already have it in Allegheny County, we already have it in Philadelphia. The rest of the state should have it, and it should be fair. So I think we could move forward with another idea on the whole idea of seniors and tax freezes. And we've seen a lot of bills over the years that have never made it to the floor. Why, I have no idea. Or maybe made it to the floor and never make it through the Senate. And I wish we could move those bills too.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure that since it's a constitutional amendment and not a normal bill, that we don't box ourselves in too narrowly, that there's broad enough authority or latitude. So when we do go to the legislative sessions, we can do exactly that. And when I just saw long-term owner occupancy, I'm just making sure that we have we feel like in a constitutional amendment, we likely only have one shot at this, that it had a broad enough latitude that we could come back and then put those guardrails and parameters up in subsequent legislation that allows the options for these other things, and we wouldn't have to come back to a constitutional move. So that was my only comment. But thank you very much for everybody's question.
Just to add to that, Mr. Chairman, if you forgive me for butting in here, I would say that I agree with that. I think that the cleanest way, though, for us to be able to find the support both in the House and the Senate is to say, how did we discriminate against the rest of the Commonwealth and not give this to everybody when we already have it in Philadelphia and Allegheny County? So I think it would be an easier way to move it that way. And then I wish I could say we can go back and do everything in one bill, but I think it's easier to get support on what we already have.
Thank you, Representative Friel, and thank you, Representative Cerisi. I am going to call on Chair Greiner from Lancaster County in a bit, but first we have a question from Representative Scott, Greg Scott of Montgomery County.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And I want to say thank you to my good colleague from Chester County, Representative Sappi, and then also my colleague from my home county, Joe Cerisi, for representing the Montgomery County delegation in these conversations. This is an incredibly important bill. Looking forward to it getting its voting day. I do have a question and some of the feedback that I've gotten is that this does not, first of all, we're in the constitutional amendment phase, so we already know we got to go through 2 sessions. I get all of that. Once we go through and we adopt the bill, do we anticipate that language mirroring the current process and that local authorities would have to then adopt this to enact it? That we're not forcing this down local authorities' throats. Is that correct?
That is correct. You can look at the current situation. Philadelphia and Allegheny counties are allowed to do this. Philadelphia has chosen to do it. Allegheny County as a whole has not. And we just changed the law to allow Pittsburgh to decide in the future whether they want to do it. So it is a local option currently. And if this would be extended to other counties, it would still be a local option.
So this is simply giving local authorities more tools in their toolkit to help the taxpayers, the senior citizens that are knocking on my door saying they can't afford to keep up with everything. Correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Got it.
And being a constitutional amendment, we would have time to consider this over a couple of sessions.
Yeah, well, thank you again to Representative Sappi, Representative Cerisi, Representative Prokopiak for your leadership on this issue. Looking forward to the day we can vote on it.
Okay, I do want to give opportunity to other members of the committee. I do want to check with Chair Keith Greiner of Lancaster County if you would have any comments or questions.
Yeah, just a couple comments. I did want to appreciate the clarification about the Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, because I was going to ask, we said we're doing it, but I want to know how successful the program has been in those 2 areas. So obviously Allegheny County hasn't done it. I do have a major concern with this. I mean, just conceptually, the whole bill in itself. So our young people are leaving the state in droves. We know we have that issue. We know that they can't buy a house. So now we're going to freeze taxes for people that have, and I get it, with seniors and affordability. I mean, that's an issue. I mean, we have tough issues to deal with. There's no simple solutions. So anytime you do property tax, anytime we're doing here, this is a tax shift. You're going to have to make up the lost revenue somewhere. And I guess I'm interested in knowing who's going to be footing the bill. Obviously, the one positive thing is it's an option. That might, so municipalities are going to have to think about that. I mean, I don't know who. It's why we don't get property tax relief done in the state, is because we can't come up with a solution about whose ox are we going to gourd when we go ahead and try to make up for the lost revenue. So maybe somebody can answer me where you think this lost revenue. Who, and maybe you haven't thought about it. Maybe you're going to leave it up to the municipalities, but who's going to make up for the shortfall for for that tax freeze. It's like I said, it's a worthy, it's a worthy, you know, cause to do this, but the flip side is where are we gonna, who's paying for it?
Thank you, Chair Greiner. I do want to give an opportunity to Representative Sappi. Let me just state first, before I was chairing this committee, I was on the Aging Committee, and I had the opportunity to chair that committee with former Representative Tim Hennessy of Chester County. I do remember he was the majority chair. I remember one of the bills we ran in that committee gave communities the option, gave school districts the option of giving a tax credit to longtime volunteers in their communities. But it wasn't forced at the state level. It was, the bill was, in, as Representative Hennessy envisioned it, would give the local school districts the option. And obviously, if a school district chose to do that for volunteers in that community and give them a tax break, I think it was $500 in that legislation, then obviously the school district would have to figure out how to pass its budget and make sure the budget was balanced. So that was another example of an option. That one did not become law at this point. I do want to give an opportunity to Representative Sappi, the prime sponsor, to respond.
Thank you again, Chairman. And I think that's a great example of which my own parents took advantage of by volunteering in their school district. But this is really, you know, optional, Chair Greiner, and it really does fall to the local government that would be considering this. So if you're a county, let's say Chester County wants, you know, to consider this, they have to look at their budget. They have to look at how many residents they have that could potentially fall into this category, and then figure out what the discount would be, and can they afford that? How important is it to this county to make the decision to participate in this? And then they set aside the money to pay for it. Now, in Philadelphia, they've already stated that the program is very popular, and so they let residents know that if we receive more people that want to participate in this program and it goes over the budget, you know, the allotted budget amount, that's going to reduce the amount of discount that residents get. So it's totally locally determined. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. I do want to give the opportunity to Chair Greiner for a follow-up.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, no, as I said, the one positive thing is the optional part of it, but I am worried about our young people just footing the bill for a lot of our taxes in the state when we are losing them in droves. And I do think, like I said, I was a former municipal official. I was a former county official. Now I'm state official. I really do believe the people that make the best decisions are at the lowest level. So that's the one good thing I like about this bill. Now, I'm going to share with you, I do like the Hennessy bill. That Hennessy bill I like. That one I have no problem with. This one that was a little bit easier because there's a trade-off and people are getting something for what they're doing there. This is a different concept. And like I said, I know we passed the Allegheny County one, and like I said, it was good to know. I wasn't sure where they were at. They haven't done anything with it yet. It's just been Philadelphia County, and I'm just saying. I don't think it's. I think there's a lot of things to think about long term. You know, I get the local option. You know, give them the opportunity to decide. That concept I do like, but I just don't. I'm worried. I have a staffer that can't even afford a house, and so now if we do that in Lancaster County, well, now she has a house, and now she's going to have to pay more taxes to foot the bill for, you know. Yet I get it with seniors too. I do think we've done a great job. I think we've done a great job working with our property tax rebate program, though, which I know I've helped shepherd through too on the Republican side. I just think that it's good that those that really need it the most, I think it's important that we do that. I think we're trying to help seniors the best we can. And personally, I still think I like that way and that methodology a little bit better maybe. But anyway, I just wanted to comment that I don't, I think there's some things to think about. That's all I wanted to bring to attention. And I'm worried about all the people. And look, I've been up here. I know I helped craft probably the most significant property tax relief bill in 30 or 40 years that went over to the Senate and it died. We talked about bills that would have saved property taxes of 40%. The bill didn't go anywhere, but that was significant back about 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. But it died because of all these other questions and reasons about, we were going to increase sales tax, income tax. We were going to do things, and people get all bent out of shape. And of course, corporations get somehow they get included in any type of relief or as we try to amend it or fix it. So anyway, but we're trying to think outside the box. Be nice to see, I don't in Philadelphia, I know they're an animal on their own, even when it comes to legislation. Anyway,
Okay.
We allowed Pittsburgh, Allegheny County to do it, I guess, right? I'm just trying to think which one it was. Which one was it, Chairman? Allegheny or Pittsburgh?
Allegheny was allowed under current law, and we amended the law this summer to allow Pittsburgh to do it on their own if they chose.
Okay.
But obviously, they've only had that authority for 2 months. They have not yet
Yep.
made a decision.
Understood. Now, I thank you for the opportunity to.
And when
to
you
ask
say Philadelphia is an
questions.
animal, it's on its own. That animal is the eagle. It's EAGLES.
Yeah, well, I'm an Eagles fan, and the other night wasn't too good. So, thank you.
Joe Cerisi has a comment on Chair Griner's question. So obviously,
No,
Chair
I wanna
Griner, you'll get a chance to come back at Representative Cerisi if you'd like. Representative Cerisi.
Well, I agree with the chairman on what he said. I mean, look, the program that was in place for the seniors is very, very well used in Pottstown. A lot of seniors take part in it, but I was a school board member in Springford, and we didn't do it because we chose not to. But it was another thing in our toolbox to allow us the opportunity to do that tax savings. And I agree with you, Chairman. I have a son that is making $56,000 a year. He said he'll never be able to buy a house because he's paying $700-800 a month in student loans. I think there's a lot of ways for us to look at stimulating the younger people to be able to buy homes. Look, we're sitting on a $14 billion surplus. Why can't we take part of that surplus and offer a student loan at 2% to every one of these kids? We still would make money on it. We're not losing any money instead of the student loan being at 11% for these kids. We need to find opportunities for them. And I agree that we should work together. And I'm more than happy to sit with you and come up with a couple bills that we would agree on to stimulate the youth to come back to Pennsylvania, to stay in Pennsylvania. But I think that what we're looking at with this bill is we've allowed these two major areas to have this option. How do we discriminate against the rest of the state? Whether you're in Lancaster County or Cambria County or Marengo County, why shouldn't they have that option if they choose to use it? And then allow the local governments to say, well, we're going to make these cuts to our budget in order to do it. Because I've often heard this said. I heard it said as I sat at that table for 12 years as a school board member. I've heard it said in Harrisburg, live within your means. So let the local government figure out, okay, live within your means and give these people the break that you want. But the state has given you the authority to have one more tool in the toolbox to try and help with that. And if you all think you can do it, go ahead and do it. And if it works for your community, great. We gave you that option. But you've brought up a lot of great points on how do we keep the youth in this state. And Governor Wolf said it, I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, that his kids left to go elsewhere. And it was a big bothersome thing to him. And I don't think we've corrected that issue. And I believe that, I'm not on finance, but I'd love to be able to work with you to look at options to keep these kids in the state. I want to keep my kid in the state. I don't want him to run somewhere else. I only got one, and I don't want to have to move in the middle of nowhere when I have grandkids someday. So I look forward to the opportunity to sit with you and really come up with a great program. But I think this just gives us another option. And thank you for that.
Thank you, Representative Cerisi. And I do want to thank Representative Griner for his comments about local control, but also for bringing up the property tax rent rebate program. As we know, that was a program that we expanded just a year ago here in the legislature. And 1 year ago, there were 416,000 people who received the rebate. But with the expansion, we are up near 500,000 already this year. And just this summer, the deadline for that program was extended till December 31st. So anybody who's listening, there is still time to sign up for a 2023 property tax or rent rebate. The income limits have been raised. For renters, it's now $45,000 net income. And for homeowners, it's also $45,000 net income. Each of our offices, we help hundreds of people with the property tax rent rebate. So I just wanted to take a moment to say there's still time, December 31st. And Chair Greiner, if you'd like to have the last word.
Just want to thank the testifiers, thank my colleagues for coming today and discussing this. I know we talked, like I said, a similar bill earlier this year with the Allegheny County Pittsburgh thing, and so I just wanted to reach out. Appreciate you taking the time. I know it's kind of funny, a lot of stuff going on, right? I think we all know there's a lot of stuff going on right now. We're busy in our districts, busy doing a lot of things, and just wanted to make sure that you knew that. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair Greiner. And as the prime sponsor, let me give Representative Sappi a chance for a closing comment before we move on to our next topic in our public hearing.
Just briefly, thank you so much to both Chair Samuelson and Chair Greiner for the opportunity to talk about this. This is something that, as Joe mentioned, Rep. Cerisi mentioned, that in June, a lot of us were scratching our heads saying, how can we expand this option for other parts of the state? It did not seem fair. So I'm excited or hopeful that we'll be able to get this through. And I want to join my colleague Rep. Cerisi in the offer to work with you, Chair Greiner, on ways that we can induce young people to stay in the state, be homeowners in this state, and continue working forward to the middle class. I mean, it's obviously so important, and it's imperative. We're the 5th largest population over 65 in the country. So I think we all understand that we need to work on these issues. So happy to roll up my sleeves and work with you all on this. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Sappi. Thank you, Representative Prokopiak. Thank you, Representative Cerisi. And thank you to the members of this committee for the questions. So that was our public hearing on House Bill 2536. We also have House Bill 2565, of which I'm the prime sponsor. I put out the co-sponsor memo this week. I've been working on language. This bill concerns the semiconductor tax credit. Now, you may recall that 2 years ago, in the tax code of 2022, we created a semiconductor tax credit as part of the EDGE program. The tax credit was slated to have a maximum of $10 million a year. Now, so far in 2022 and 2023 and 2024, no one has taken advantage of the semiconductor tax credit. One of the reasons is the language that we put in the tax code 2 years ago was geared to a very large company. We had parameters like there must be 800 new jobs created, and there must be an investment of $200 million. So the tax credit that was written that summer was written with the option of attracting a large company. I've had feedback in my legislative district and from the Lehigh Valley that we should make a couple of changes to make sure companies are taking advantage of this. And the bill I'm putting forward, as I said, I realize the memo just went out this week and the language is in front of you, but we have an opportunity to amend the language based on today's testimony and also any other input we receive. Would say that I'm proposing changes in two different ways. One is to take of that $10 million, take $2 million and set that aside for small startup companies. And those small startup companies we would define in the bill, we would call them an early stage semiconductor business. The tax credit, instead of being like the whole $10 million, they could be eligible for a tax credit in the neighborhood of $100,000 as a minimum. And the early stage company might have an investment of $10 million in revenue, a budget of $10 million in revenue, rather than the $200 million that was envisioned in the original bill. So that would be carved out, and $2 million would be set aside under this proposal for early stage companies. There's a proposal right now in the Lehigh Valley, spearheaded by the Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation with cooperation from Lehigh University, and some private investors that would say that they want to have an incubator for early stage semiconductor companies. So there's an example right in the Lehigh Valley of how this tax credit could be used if we were able to set aside some for early stage companies. The other change would say that instead of having one large tax credit for one large company, let's allow several companies across Pennsylvania. So instead of the $200 million investment, my legislation would envision lowering that to $20 million. And instead of a tax credit of the full amount, maybe a tax credit of $1 million. It would still be defined as 2.5% of an investment. So a company that would receive a $1 million tax credit would have to make a $40 million investment. 40 million times 2.5% is $1 million. Let's say a company made an $80 million investment, then they would be eligible for a tax credit of up to $2 million. Obviously, the Department of Revenue, the Department of Community and Economic Development would have to figure out if there was enough tax credit budgeted to accommodate all the requests across Pennsylvania. And so those are the basics of the proposal that's before you. I do have some expert testimony to come before us, and I have Don Cunningham, who is the president and CEO of the Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation. And we had a meeting several months ago in the Lehigh Valley with local legislators, and this was one of the topics. Why don't we make some changes to our semiconductor tax credit to allow for more investment? We were listening at that meeting that you held, Don. And also after Don, we have Nathan Urban, the provost of Lehigh University in Bethlehem. So let me start with Don Cunningham, CEO and president of LVEDC and a former mayor of the city of Bethlehem, and a former cabinet secretary under Governor Ed Rendell a couple years ago here in Harrisburg. Don Cunningham.
Well, thank you so much, Chairman Samuelson, for inviting me in to testify on your House Bill 2565, which, as you said, would amend the PA-ED Semiconductor Biomedical Research Tax Credit under your Act 108 of 2022. As Chairman Samuelson said, my name is Don Cunningham, and I'm honored to be able to run the Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation, which is a public-private partnership here in the Lehigh Valley, which is the state's third largest population center and economy in Lehigh and Northampton counties. Our mission at LVEDC is to develop economic growth strategy for the Lehigh Valley and to work to retain and recruit new businesses and jobs in targeted economic sectors. We do this by working with our existing businesses, colleges and universities, school districts, other regional organizations, and our partners in local, county, state, and national government. LVDC is a large coalition that takes a regional approach to target resources and strategies aimed at creating high-quality jobs and economic growth in the Lehigh Valley. Last year, our region, the Lehigh Valley, was first in the United States for development projects with markets of 200,000 to 1 million people. Here we have a very rich history in semiconductor development and manufacture. It was at Western Electric in Allentown where transistors, the forerunners to semiconductors, were first mass produced in 1951. The region was the world epicenter of optoelectronics packaging. The talent was here, the knowledge was here, and today that legacy continues with Lehigh Valley operations of internationally known companies such as Intel, Broadcom, Cisco, Coherent, and Infinera, who are developing, producing, and assembling semiconductors that are relied on not only by Google, Microsoft, AT&T, and Verizon, but Meta, AWS, Netflix, Nokia, and the Department of Defense, among others. We were here in Pennsylvania the first Silicon Valley, and along with some of the country's leading technology firms there are great new ones starting and growing here in Pennsylvania in the Lehigh Valley. More than 1,500 people are employed in about 30 Lehigh Valley tech companies, including smaller ones such as Iuna, Ideal Semiconductor, and Poet Technologies. The federal CHIPS Act of 2022, with its focus on reshoring critical semiconductor manufacturing to the United States, has spurred interest and accelerated investment in this sector of the U.S. economy, including here in Pennsylvania. While most semiconductor companies are based in the United States, most manufacturing occurs in Asia. The goal of the CHIPS Act is to spur domestic production and limit economic national security and supply chain risks in the U.S. As Chairman Samuelson said, Pennsylvania joined that federal effort in 2022 with the PA EDGE program and the Semiconductor Biomedical Research Tax Credit that was authorized under Act 108 of 2022. It allowed Pennsylvania to provide $20 million a year in tax credits for 5 years, allocating $10 million to the semiconductor sector and $10 million to the biomedical manufacturing and research arena. But the act requires a company to invest $200 million and to create at least 800 permanent jobs. This supports a mega manufacturing fab. Unfortunately, there are few of those projects across the nation, and those site decisions now have been made and CHIPS Act funding has been committed. And none of the Pennsylvania tax credits have been used after nearly 3 full years of the program. But tremendous opportunity remains, however, for growth of the semiconductor sector with smaller projects. But it's a very, very competitive market. About 15 states across the U.S. have put in place very aggressive tax credit and incentive programs to attract semiconductor companies. One of the things we hear regularly from both large and small companies that we're working with to retain and expand or to recruit is, tell me why we should do this in Pennsylvania as opposed to doing it in Texas, New York, Ohio, Wisconsin, or other states that have incentivization programs. With some relatively small changes to the existing program, Pennsylvania will make itself competitive and grow this part of our economy. LVDC strongly supports Chairman Samuelson's bill 2565 to amend Act 108 and make the semiconductor tax credit portion of the act more flexible and scaled down to incentivize smaller projects, so the minimum tax credit award could be as little as $1 million. The proposed amendment reduces the threshold of investment from $200 million to $20 million, and the job requirements from 800 jobs created to 80 jobs created or retained. LVDC also strongly supports that $2 million a year of the $10 million tax credit total be dedicated to early stage semiconductor businesses. These would be companies with less than $10 million in revenue and who have invested at least $3 million in R&D in the previous year. It is vital that we focus some of these tax incentives on early stage companies who are innovating and building businesses in Pennsylvania. With the existence of first-rate research universities like Lehigh University in Bethlehem, the Ben Franklin Technology Centers, and the legacy of companies and talent that's already here, Pennsylvania once again can be at the forefront of this vitally important part of our national economy. Talent is the key to all economic development, and it's vital to the semiconductor center. We don't have to import our talent here in Pennsylvania. It's already here coming out of our universities. It's already here in existing companies, and we are producing it. Possibly the best part of these proposed changes is that they will have no fiscal impact on the state budget. This bill does not ask for new funds, but new requirements for the allocation of tax credits that are already funded and have been going unused. So thank you, Chairman Samuelson, for allowing us to offer input. Thank you to the committee for considering these alterations to the existing tax bill in Pennsylvania. And hopefully we can work together to continue to grow this part of a vital area of the nation's economy that can be grown here in Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Thank you, Don Cunningham, for your testimony. And I'm going to call on Nathan Urban in a second. I do want to point out a couple of things in the bill. One, the jobs requirement, which is currently 800. I know there was a proposal to have it lowered to 80. We've had some discussions with the Shapiro administration, and I've settled on a number of 100 jobs. So under the bill on page 5, I do have it listed as, instead of 800 jobs, it would be 100 jobs. Right in the section, I'm sorry. Wrong page. Page 3. It's 100 jobs on page 3. And that is where we also lowered the minimum investment from 200 million to 20 million. So that is halfway down on page 3. There is another thing I did want to mention. The existing law that we've had since 2022 has two ways to get the tax credit: either 2.5% of your overall capital investment, or up to 100% of the taxes that have been withheld from employees. And so that is in the current law. We are maintaining that language. So there'll be two ways that a company could qualify for the tax credit. And I want to thank Don Cunningham for pointing out one of the selling points of this bill, that there is no fiscal impact. The $10 million has been set aside in our budget since 2022. It hasn't been used, so we're not asking for an expansion of that $10 million. We're just redefining how it can be used. I'd like to call on Nathan Urban, the provost of Lehigh University. I'm a proud graduate myself, and I appreciate Lehigh's partnership with the Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation on a possible semiconductor hub that we're working on in the Lehigh Valley. Nathan Urban.
Thank you, Chairman Samuelson and members of the committee, for the opportunity to discuss these important issues today. I am Nathan Urban. I'm the Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs at Lehigh University. Lehigh, as I hope you all know, is a private research university located here in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and in the Lehigh Valley. I've been at Lehigh for about 4 years, after spending 13 years as a faculty member and in leadership roles at Carnegie Mellon University, and 5 years at the University of Pittsburgh, which is my alma mater. During my career, I have seen firsthand the role that outstanding research universities like CMU, Pitt, and Lehigh can play in regional economic development, especially in areas that are connected to innovation and technology. Research universities create an environment in which federal and state funds that support the university's mission for research, innovation, and education of future leaders can then foster economic growth, job creation, and even the creation of entire new industries. I recall a meeting a few years ago at which Steve Case, the founder of AOL, an entrepreneur and venture capitalist, said that the difference between the economic paths of Pittsburgh and Detroit was largely because of the strength of Pittsburgh's research universities, Pitt and Carnegie Mellon primarily. Pittsburgh's regional economy, driven by healthcare, information technology, robotics, and education, depends on the research universities both as a source of innovation and, importantly, as Don mentioned, a source of talent to meet the needs of a technology-driven economy. Similarly, the life sciences economy of the Philadelphia area, extending into the Lehigh Valley, has thrived because of the research and innovation driven by Penn, Temple, Drexel, Thomas Jefferson, and others. At Lehigh, we are similarly committed to strengthening the innovation economy in the Lehigh Valley in partnership with LVEDC and other organizations. We have created a new strategic plan that focuses on building from our history of innovative, purposeful, and pragmatic research in areas like science, engineering, and business. Initiatives under this strategic plan include ones that direct strategic investment to create strength in research areas that will have long-term scientific and economic impact. We have seen a more than 50% increase in research funding since July of 2020. We were recently one of 18 universities across the country to be awarded about $6 million from the National Science Foundation under a program called Accelerating Research Translation. And the purpose of this program is to facilitate the path from discovery to translation to economic impact. Lehigh has renewed its commitment to partnering with organizations in the Lehigh Valley on many fronts. We've worked closely with LVEDC to foster opportunities for small and large companies in the region, especially in the semiconductor and life sciences spaces, and to partner with these organizations and companies as we seek federal and state support for work in all parts of the innovation ecosystem. Lehigh is also focused on training and education through programs at the graduate and undergraduate level that produce talented and capable students who can contribute from day one. We see all of this as supporting the creation of a vibrant innovation economy in the region for the mutual benefit of the university, our students, and the citizens of the region. Based on my experience elsewhere, I believe that Pennsylvania and the Lehigh Valley are primed for growth in areas related to semiconductors and also life sciences, and that research universities like Lehigh must play a critical role if this potential is to be realized. Pennsylvania has many outstanding research universities. We rank among the top 10 states in the country for federal research and development investment. Pitt and Penn are often among the top 5 institutions in the country in terms of NIH funding. Carnegie Mellon is routinely ranked as best in the country in computer science and robotics. Lehigh has an incredible history and strengths in many areas of engineering, including structural engineering, material science, industrial and systems engineering, that are critical to industries like the semiconductor manufacturing industry. But we in Pennsylvania have not seen the level of startup company formation, economic growth, job creation, especially from small businesses, that have been seen in other parts of the country where similar research universities are located. I think the state has an opportunity through the governor's new strategic plan for economic development and through tailored legislation, such as the bill in front of the committee today, to accelerate the process of translating discovery to innovation, to economic activity, and to realize the potential economic impact of some of the best research universities in the country. Thank you for the time and for the opportunity to speak to you today about this important issue.
Thank you, Provost Urban. I do have a couple of questions from the committee members. I do want to say we did receive testimony from the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue, and that testimony has been shared with the 25 members of this committee. We have it in email. We also have printed copies for everyone. And also, I do want to point out one other thing in the bill. The current law allows the tax credit for manufacturing of components, and all, but we are expanding it to allow for advanced testing and packaging. One of the activities that semiconductor companies do on a necessary and basis as part of their work. And so we are the bill on page 4 expands the allowable activities to include advanced testing and packaging of components. The first question we have, I will call on Chair Greiner, but the first question we have is from Representative Friel of Chester County.
Thank you, Chairman. And this is less of a question as more of a statement that I love this bill. I think this is a very good approach to expanding the competitiveness of Pennsylvania to both, and I especially love the focus on the startup and innovation side of this. I think it makes a lot of sense not to put all our eggs in one basket, trying to get like a big deal that we're competing with, but allow smaller companies and innovation companies and a hub to be eligible for these tax credits. I think it says a lot about making Pennsylvania a place to put these type of companies and investments and and putting an environment where we can build manufacturing, especially after the CHIP Act of the federal CHIP Act, which Representative Houlihan in my district was one of the sponsors of that bill. I think this is great, so I really appreciate it. And I'm just gonna, as just a quick plug, this pairs very well with the tradable NOL bill for startups that would work very nicely with this. So I just had to throw that in there. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Appreciate you promoting your legislation. So I have a couple of questions. We have online. We have Representative Mike Jones. So I will call on Mike Jones first, and then go to Chair Greiner. Representative Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. I knew you were smart. I didn't know you were Lehigh smart, so I'm even more impressed. I thought I was going to Lehigh out of high school. They gave me a really good offer, and then I had a little better financial offer somewhere else. So that was.
Hopefully you didn't. Hopefully you're not going to say Lafayette.
Yeah, or I might. No. Of course, I might not have cut it there. So who knows? Anyway, just a couple of quick ones. Kind of in no particular order here, either for you, Chairman, or maybe Mr. Cunningham. Debates on the nature of tax credits and if that's the best use of attracting companies versus tax and regulatory reform, which I tend to favor. But why would this include, and I understand the concept, but why would this include retention of workers as opposed to new investment, new hires, especially in an area where it's not like it's a large, we're not sitting in Detroit trying to retain a large automotive facility or something. We're trying to kind of get in the game. And I'm not quite sure why we would, in this case at least, include retention, especially when all of the discussion has been around attracting startups and new business. And then for the sake of time, I'll throw in the other question I have is, speaking of startups, can this be somebody with just an idea and a concept, almost like an angel, and where we're playing almost angel investor, or do they have to have some kind of track record, some kind of product developed, or could they apply simply based on an idea? I'll pause there, and then I have one very quick one after that, please.
I'll jump in first, and I'll call on Don Cunningham. We already have some semiconductor companies all across Pennsylvania, including several in the Lehigh Valley, both larger semiconductor companies and also some startups that have already launched. So the reason I'm trying to expand the definition to include current and retained jobs is we should make this, in my view, we should make this tax credit available for companies that are already have already established themselves, but this tax credit could help them grow and create even more jobs. I'd like to call on Don Cunningham.
Yes, Representative. So in the competitive world of economic development, your first objective always is not to lose what you have. And retention and expansion of existing companies and existing jobs is critical, because you don't want to go backwards. While we're all competing for the net new, those coming into the market from somewhere else, it takes more work to bring in net new, but it also takes work to retain. And I'll give you a specific example. Because there is a smaller universe of companies across the nation in this space, they are very aware of and are looking at the centers of innovation, the states that have the university network, the talent network, and where the states are engaged to go. For example, we're working right now with an investment group called Murray Hill Investment, which really came out of Texas, that is invested in 3 or 4 early stage companies that Chairman Samuelson mentioned, that we are trying to have them implant those early stage companies here in an acceleration facility instead of in Texas. So these are the type of companies that say to us, why should we be in Pennsylvania versus here? Conversely, our companies are looking at incentives for these really high paying technical jobs in other states. That's why the retention piece in this arena, maybe unlike auto manufacturing in Detroit or something, becomes a critical component because everybody has access to the federal CHIPS Act, but each state is really tailoring its own approach towards growing and keeping what they may have. So in the Lehigh Valley, we've had a good base of these companies, as I've said, since the 50s. We don't want to have them all leaving to go to these other states that have put much more appealing packages on the table. In regards to that one comment about angel investment, I believe that the proposed changes in this do not apply to something like that because it really requires a company to have already done $3 million in R&D and be at a $10 million mark. These are not what I would call necessarily startups. The language would be early stage. So they're already existing. They're already in the marketplace. They already have employees. And they'd have to have proven themselves really to be eligible for this tax credit to keep them here and growing. Thank you.
Thank you, Don Cunningham. We also have a comment from Provost Nathan Urban of Lehigh, and then I know Representative Jones of York County has a follow-up question. Provost Urban.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I would just echo what Don said and sort of add to it that attracting the next company will be harder if we've lost a company already. And so retention is critical. The talent base for these companies is a shared one across the region, and they see the ability to bring in people as dependent on having kind of a critical mass of jobs, a critical mass of talent in this sector in order for them to be successful. And the second point that I would make is from the standpoint of very early stage investment, the Ben Franklin system across the state has been effective. Certainly here in the Lehigh Valley, Ben Franklin of Northeast Pennsylvania has been very effective at fostering some very early stage investment in companies like some of the ones that Don mentioned, some of the ones that we are seeking to retain here in the region. So that's an existing program that I think fosters some of that very early stage investment for companies that don't yet necessarily have revenue, have a product, et cetera.
Thank you. So I know we lost, I'm not from that exact area, but I had some friends that worked at, I remember going back a number of years, but we lost a lot of jobs up in the Reading area with AT&T Semiconductor. I think I'm correct leaving there. And then Lucent sent a lot of their stuff overseas, I think more up in your area. I kind of get the, retaining jobs is sort of as important as attracting new ones. And but I guess my concern would simply be, and I think some of the adjustments make sense without these big 800 job requirements and all of that. That's really kind of elephant hunting when we should probably be, deer hunting or squirrel hunting or something. But I would express a concern if the existing program hasn't really been used. While these changes would help, I would suspect a lot of this might end up going to retention rather than new creation. It's just a thought or a concern. You can like that or not like it, but I think that, it might go more. We're kind of touting it as attracting a lot of new investment. It might just end up being used for existing companies to threaten to leave and get retention. My last question, are we defining the semiconductor industry broad enough? And we don't need to get into the weeds, but specifically, one of my best friends, for example, has worked for KLA-Tencor for a long time. They don't necessarily, I don't believe, I could be wrong on this, but traditionally they did not make semiconductors, but they made the equipment that inspects semiconductors. So if somebody were to manufacture equipment for this industry, and there's probably a couple examples, there's probably software people out there, but not directly associated. And I know you mentioned testing and that sort of thing, but not directly associated with the actual manufacturer of the chips, but maybe the manufacturer of the equipment or the software that's one step removed. Is it broad enough, or are we good the way it is?
Yeah, so we
I mean, I
have
would
in the
think
bill.
if KLA or Kalicki or one of them said, we want to put a plant in to make equipment that inspects wafers or something like that, not make the actual chips and not
So-
directly touch the chips, but make
So
the
in this
equipment that they would qualify, I would think.
So in this bill, we have the definition of semiconductor manufacturers that's currently in state law, and on page 4 of the bill, as proposed, I have that the following activities would either the manufacturing of components or the creation of advanced processes or technologies. That's an existing law. The new section is halfway down page 4, advanced testing and packaging of components. And that's being added under this legislation. I know if Representative Jones has a suggestion, that's what we have right now in the bill. The 2 existing activities plus the addition of advanced testing and packaging.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I think that does help. I will seek some counsel from 1 or 2 of my friends that are in the industry to see if there's suggested anything additional there to run by you, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I did promise an opportunity to Chair Keith Greiner of Lancaster County for any comments on this legislation.
I just, not a lot of comments other than I want to thank the testifiers. And like I said, I know I still want real reform, and I know we tweak around the edges with tax credits, but just like I said, just very informative. Appreciate you, Chairman, for having a hearing, reaching out to I know they're from your area, but having them come in today. And I will say on a positive note, I'm really glad to see, don't think you mentioned, don't want to embarrass him, but I'm glad to see Mark Foreman there. And I know it's been it's been a while, but I just it made me feel good to see him there. And I know I'll get an opportunity to catch up with him in a couple weeks, and then we can, if we need to spar, we'll spar then. But actually, I don't spar with Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. I look forward to it.
Appreciate his efforts too, and all the hard work he does for the Finance Committee. But anyway, but nope, I think we're good for now. And like I said, hope you have hey, you're welcome, and we'll hope everybody has a good day.
Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for everyone who participated. I do want to give a quick opportunity for Don Cunningham or Nathan Urban or both to offer a closing comment as we move forward on this legislation. Don?
I would just say in closing, it's rare that I think we in the world of economic development and in our state or in our region get to participate in something that's so important nationally. The moving of semiconductor production back to the United States, I think, is critical from a national defense purpose. It's critical from a supply chain purpose. Just about every piece of consumer product now involves a chip. Obviously, our military hardware involves chips. And having this production so dependent on overseas workers, I think is a critical issue for the country. And so this industry is a little different than others. I would just encourage the committee to look at in the world of economic development. It has an overlay that we typically don't deal with. And, we have an opportunity to really kind of piggyback off of what the CHIPS Act has done because of the talent and assets and legacy and companies that we already have in Pennsylvania. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to Nathan Urban. I'll give you an opportunity.
Thanks very much. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to the committee.
Thank you. And thank you to the committee members for participating in this hearing. I know we have this tool in our economic development toolbox in Pennsylvania since 2022, $10 million semiconductor tax credit. We haven't used it so far, so my legislation seeks to make some necessary changes so that it can be used by semiconductor manufacturers all across Pennsylvania, and also to make sure we focus on early stage semiconductor businesses. Just a note for scheduling, I know we're back here in Harrisburg as a full legislature the week of September 30th. I've scheduled a voting meeting on Tuesday, October 1st. We have 3 weeks of session in the month of October. So I've set aside October 1st to bring up some topics that we'd like to put forward before the legislature. And that meeting would start at 9:30 on Tuesday, October 1st. One topic that I know we do want to talk about is a bill that Representative Briggs has introduced. And it's on the Board of Finance and Review, the process that's used when there's a tax appeal. And that legislation has been introduced. I believe we will consider it on October 1st, but I want to have an opportunity for members to ask questions. It's House Bill 1994, so I am going to schedule a second public hearing next week. So Wednesday, September 25th at 11, we will have a public hearing on Representative Briggs's legislation, so we can have an opportunity before the voting meeting on October 1st. Without any other comment, I would like to thank all of the committee members for participating, and thank you to our testifiers for participating in our hearing today. This public hearing is adjourned.